People think the wilderness is dangerous because of animals. Bears, cougars, snakes. That's what they warn you about. But no one ever warns you about the kind of danger that knows how to walk without making a sound. In the summer of 1995, I was a volunteer trail guide in a remote wilderness area in southeastern Oklahoma. 14,000 acres of forest, mountains, and creeks, so isolated that if something went wrong, help was hours away. That night, I was camping alone near a place called He Creek. No tourists, no radio signal. Just me, my campfire, and the dark. I remember sitting there, reading by headlamp when I heard footsteps in the trees. Not running, not panicked. Slow, careful, like whoever or whatever it was didn't want to be heard. I called out into the darkness, trying to sound calm. But the forest didn't answer. Instead, it went silent. And if you've ever spent a night in the woods, you know how wrong that feels. Because when the forest goes quiet, it's usually because something dangerous is nearby. Moments later, something rushed me out of the dark. I saw metal flash in the firelight, a knife. I barely survived that night. But what I found the next morning was far worse than the attack itself. Because the man who tried to kill me wasn't lost. He wasn't passing through. He was living out there, watching, waiting. And that's when I learned the truth about places like He Creek. Sometimes the wilderness doesn't just hide monsters. Sometimes it gives them room to grow. I don't talk about this story much anymore. Not because I'm afraid people won't believe me, but because every time I think about it, I remember just how thin the line is between civilization and chaos. Back in the summer of 1995, I was a college kid with plans, ambition, and a future my father was proud of. I was studying law at Texas A&M, doing everything I could to climb out of the ranch life I'd grown up in and into something bigger. But no matter how far I got from Oklahoma, the wilderness never really left me. When I heard about a volunteer trail guide program in McCurtain County wilderness area, it felt like fate. No academic credit, no pay, just expenses covered. A free trip back home surrounded by forests I knew better than most people know their own neighborhoods. 14,000 acres of rugged terrain, dense pine forests, cold, clean creeks, wildlife everywhere. To most people, it was paradise. To me, it was familiar. I wasn't a cowboy, but I knew rifles, I knew tracks. I knew how silence worked in the woods, how it could either comfort you or warn you. Most of my work involved leading small groups along marked trails. Families, retirees, the occasional nervous city couple who wanted nature but didn't really understand it. And then there were the solo assignments. Campsite scouting. Those were my favorite. Campsite scouting meant heading far beyond where tourists went. We needed places that were flat, dry, safe from falling trees, close to water, and, most importantly, free from animal activity. No bear scat, no cougar tracks, no fresh diggings, and once a site looked promising, someone had to stay there overnight. That someone was usually me. On paper, it was simple. In reality, it meant spending the night completely alone, miles from the nearest human being. That summer, my supervisor asked me to check an area near He Creek. I remember pausing when he said the name. He Creek sat deep in the wilderness, where the Mountain Fork River slowed and widened. Hardly anyone camped there. Too far, too isolated. It was an 8 to 9 hour hike just to reach it. But isolation was exactly what made it appealing. I left at sunrise. The deeper I went, the quieter the forest became. The birds thinned out. The trails narrowed. Even the wind seemed reluctant to move. By late afternoon, I found it. A perfect peninsula of land, slightly elevated, overlooking the water. Flat ground, clear sight lines, no animal signs, too perfect. That should have bothered me. It didn't. I set up my one-man tent and built a fire as the sun sank behind the trees. No bear tracks, no cougar signs, no hog activity. Still, I kept my revolver close. Southeastern Oklahoma isn't just animal country, it's isolation country, and isolation attracts things that don't want to be found. I cooked dinner, sat by the fire, and started reading by a headlamp. That was when I heard it. A soft crunch, footsteps, 20, maybe 30 yards away. I froze. At first I told myself it was nothing. A deer, a branch falling. I casually called out, "Howdy, y'all." Silence. The woods don't go quiet when animals are around. They go quiet when something knows you're there. Minutes passed. Then I heard it again. Closer, slower, deliberate. My hand moved to my gun. I spoke louder this time. You gotta be real brave or real stupid to sneak up on someone camping at night. That wasn't a bluff. I heard movement just beyond the firelight, behind a tree. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might give me away. I cocked the hammer and aimed at the trunk. Then something moved, fast, too fast. Footsteps exploded to my right, and before I could turn, a shape rushed me. Firelight flashed across metal. A knife. I dove over my tent as the blade cut the air inches from my head. The figure yelled, not words, just a sound, and vanished into the trees. I fired once. The gunshot shattered the night. No scream, just running footsteps fading into the dark. I didn't chase him. I didn't sleep. I backed away from my campsite and watched it from the darkness, gun in hand, until the sky finally started to lighten. I kept thinking one question over and over. How did he get that close without making a sound? At dawn, I followed his trail. Blood, drops leading away from camp, and they led me to a cave cut into the rock face. Chest high, deep and wrong. Inside were bones. Animal bones, camping trash. Someone had been living there, waiting. I returned to base 9 hours later and told my supervisor everything. They shut down camping near He Creek permanently. The sheriff said I'd been within my rights to shoot. They never found the man, or the body, but that place was never the same again. People think the wilderness is dangerous because of animals. That's a lie we tell ourselves. Animals follow rules. People don't. And, sometimes far from roads and cities, men stop pretending to be human at all. The cave bothered me more than the attack itself. Anyone can snap. Anyone can swing a blade in the dark. But a cave like that took time. Planning. Inside, the smell hit me first. Rot. A damp stone. Old blood. The bones weren't arranged, but they weren't random either. Like someone had dragged their meals inside instead of leaving them out in the open. That meant one thing. He lived there. Not passing through. Not lost. Living. I backed out slowly. Every instinct screaming at me to leave before he came back. I marked the location on my map with shaking hands and started the long hike home. Every snapped twig made me flinch. I never stopped checking behind me. Back at headquarters, my supervisor listened quietly. Didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions. When I finished, he nodded once and said, "You did the right thing." The sheriff's reaction was colder. He said attacks happened sometimes. Said drifters passed through. Said it would be hard to find anyone in that terrain. No search party, no investigation. They just closed He Creek. That told me something else I didn't like. This wasn't the first time. After that summer, I started noticing patterns. Old trail markers removed. Certain areas never assigned for scouting. Guides who refused overnight trips without explanation. Once, I asked an older ranger about He Creek. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "Some places don't want people there." Then he walked away. Years passed before I understood why I was attacked. I wasn't loud, I wasn't careless. I didn't bring groups. I was alone. Predators don't hunt crowds, they hunt silence. 2 years later, a fisherman went missing near the Mountain Fork River. They found his truck. They never found him. I knew where they should have looked. They didn't ask. Sometimes I still dream about that night. Not the knife. Not the gunshot. What haunts me is how close he got without a sound. That kind of silence doesn't come from practice. It comes from living where no one listens. People romanticize the wilderness. They imagine bears, wolves, storms. But those things announce themselves. The real danger out there walks quietly, sleeps during the day, learns your routines, and when civilization fades, some men stop pretending they belong to it. I never camped alone again after that. I still hike, still love the forest, but I never forget this. If something is watching you in the woods and wants to stay hidden, it already knows where you are. And if you ever feel like the forest itself is holding its breath, leave. Because He Creek taught me one thing I'll never forget. The wilderness doesn't just hide monsters. Sometimes it grows them. Most missing person cases in the wilderness don't end well. When someone disappears into the forest at night, you prepare yourself for the worst. You expect injuries, confusion, maybe shock. What you don't expect is for them to come back wrong. I was guiding a small family through a remote backcountry trail when it happened. An older woman named Patty. Sweet, warm, the kind of person who made everyone feel at ease. That night, she walked out of her tent. Barefoot. No flashlight. No explanation. We found her standing in the trees, shaken but unharmed. At least, that's what we thought, because the next morning she started saying things she should never have known, accusing her family of secrets that weren't true, smiling while she said them, enjoying the pain it caused. Her personality changed so fast it felt like someone had flipped a switch. And then she tried to kill her own husband with a rock. There was no head injury, no drugs, no reason. Later, when her son called her mom, she didn't recognize him. Whatever happened to Patty in the dark that night, it didn't leave her when the sun came up. After prison, I needed a fresh start. That's how I became a wilderness guide in the Passeton backcountry. The work was honest. The trails were peaceful. Until the night Patty disappeared. Patty was an elderly woman hiking with her husband and adult children. Sweet, cheerful, full of warmth. One of those people who made the job feel worthwhile. We set up camp and turned in early. Sometime during the night, her husband woke to an empty sleeping bag. Patty was gone. Barefoot. No flashlight. We searched the forest, calling her name into the blackness. Nothing answered. Then suddenly, relief. They found her standing in the trees, confused but unharmed. She said she didn't remember leaving the tent. At first, I thought she was just shaken. But the next morning, she wasn't the same woman. As we hiked back, Patty began whispering cruel accusations to her husband. Things that made no sense. Things that clearly weren't true. Her smile never faded. She turned on her children next, saying things so vile they made her daughter cry. When I tried to calm her down, she looked me straight in the eyes and threatened me. That was when I knew something was deeply wrong. Then she picked up a rock and tried to kill her husband. We restrained her and rushed for help. By the time medical transport arrived, she was vomiting, apologizing, crying, and then forgetting who her own son was. There was no head injury, no fall, no explanation. To this day, I still wonder what Patty encountered in those woods, because whatever followed her back was wearing her face. People go into the wilderness looking for peace. They think the forest will quiet their minds, wash their stress away, make them feel human again. Sometimes it does the opposite. After years as a wilderness guide, I learned something they don't put on trail maps or safety signs. The forest doesn't just test your body. It tests your identity. I've seen calm people become violent. Strong people break down crying. Good people do things they can't explain. And the worst part, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, like something peeling layers away until there's nothing left underneath. There are places deep in the wilderness where guides refuse to camp. Trails that look safe during the day, but feel wrong the moment the sun sets. Not because of animals, because of the people who went insane and came out changed. Or didn't come out at all. This is about what happens when civilization is too far away to hold you together. And the wilderness decides what you become. Instead, guiding teaches you something most people never learn. Nature doesn't just test your body, it tests your mind. I've seen confident people break down after one night in the forest. I've watched calm hikers become paranoid, aggressive, irrational. The wilderness strips something away. Sometimes, it replaces it with something else. Every guide has stories they don't tell tourists, places we refuse to camp, trails we won't hike after sunset. Not because of animals, but because of people who went into the wild and didn't come back right.